My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Ben Bugale.
And you're listening to pixelprojectradio, a video game discussions podcast where we talk all about the games that we love and some that you love too. And today marks the beginning of our spooky October.
It's a spooktacular. Fasten your seatbelt. And I was going to try to make a joke and say, or you could unfasten it for the sake of thrill, but no, don't. Don't. Absolutely keep yourself as safe as possible.
Unbuckled seatbelts. Spooky.
It's a little too spooky, if you know what I'm saying. What does that mean?
I don't know. Sometimes you say stuff and I just don't question it. I'm just like, I feel it. I don't understand it, but I feel it.
I question it a lot, and I am inside of this vessel with that voice.
Today we are talking about probably the most unique game that I think we've done on the show so far.
I looked at your face and I felt the pregnant pause on both sides of this call. We're talking about a game. We held a poll last year for the scariest game, and this was one of the games that tied for first place. We're talking about PT.
Yeah, PT, or Playable Teaser, the game that released almost without any fanfare, almost anonymously, in August, on the 12th to be exact, of 2014 on the PlayStation Network. Ben, you mentioned that this was one of the tied winners.
Yes.
What happened was it ended up coming down to PT and Silent Hill 2.
Yes.
And I think it tied 2 or 3 times straight because you kept putting it out, didn't you?
I did. What I kept doing was, okay, sudden death, whoever gets the most, whoever, by this hour at this time, and everyone kept coming back to vote. And it's really a testament to these 2 games, a testament to the franchise, though, pound for pound. Honestly, shocking. Yeah, just kept putting it out and saying, all right, who's going to do it? Which one's it going to be? One of them's got it. And people just kept voting. So, yeah, there was like 2 or 3 head-to-heads with these 2 and just couldn't settle it, which is amazing.
And the reason that we decided to do PT, at least first, is partly because neither of us really wanted to rush through Silent Hill 1. And we knew that PT would be easier to get through, but turns out only in a sense. We'll talk all about that as we go on. But for now, Silent Hill 2... on the back burner. Mm-hmm. For all you diehard fans, don't worry.
We will.
We'll get there. On a long enough timeline, we will get there, for certain.
We will. And, I don't, to be honest, Rick, because of the nature of PT, I don't think it's fair for us to even try to rate this game.
I did come up with a 1-sentence review, a true one.
I am so ready. I did not, but I'm really curious to hear yours.
So for those that don't know, if you're a new listener to the podcast, first of all, welcome. What we try to do typically is go through a game in a book club style form, a true book club style form. So we kind of cover the development, the history, etc. And then in the story, we go through it top to bottom without spoiling anything along the way. This one will be a little bit different because this is a very unique game. But we also, at the very front, like to give a short little blurb about how we felt about the game, sort of a TLDR, just as a personal little, hey, this is how we felt, as a little preview, a little nugget, if you will, before the rest of the scrumptious sandwich that is the episode. Mm. And I have one about PT, a true 1 sentence. We often go far beyond that. It's kind of a running thing with the show, but I've got a true 1 sentence.
I'm excited to hear it.
A work born from the hands of 2 masters. PT is one of the scariest games never made.
Nothing else needs said.
It's a peculiar game, and if you weren't aware of PT when it came out, we'll kind of take you through the history and what happened, but it is a peculiar title that was was literally a playable teaser for an upcoming game from Kojima Productions, Silent Hills.
What makes this particularly fascinating is, and if any of you are thinking to pause this to go look up how you can play PT, good luck, because unless you have a PlayStation 4 that has PT on it, you're really not going to find the original incarnation of this game, hence the game that never was. It's, to be honest, Rick, I think the thing that makes this interesting, and I know we'll get into the weeds about this, but this game is a legend because of how it's not really playable. You know what I mean? Like, it's a legend from being scary, but it's also now a legend because if you are one of those people who is so fortunate to have this game on your system, like, don't delete it for anything because you will never find this again.
This game pushed itself into the zeitgeist in a very real way, partly because of Kojima being Kojima, and we'll get into that, but also because of the fallout between Konami and Kojima, which, spoiler alert, caused this to get pulled from the PlayStation Network. But you are right, Ben. There is no legal way right now to play PT unless you have a PlayStation 4 on which you downloaded PT at the time. And I believe, I haven't confirmed this, so don't take this as Bible, but I believe that it even had to have been disconnected from the internet since. I don't know
Jeez
how
Louise.
accurate that is, but yeah, after this got pulled, PS4s were being, auctioned off on eBay for $1,000, $1,500.
Rick, as you know, I like spooky games. I like scary games. I like games that are sincerely and authentically unsettling. I wish to God that I would have had an actual chance to play this game, because just watching some playthroughs, and I'm curious to know whose playthroughs you've watched, having to do some Let's Plays of this, masterfully done. Like jump scares that aren't necessarily cheap, and a lot of imagery that really is kind of makes your hairs on your neck stand up a little bit. You know what I mean?
And, the thing is we were living together at this time, and I know I had a PS4.
I know.
And I even remember that this is going to sound so sad. I even remember us playing like the Five Nights at Freddy's series at this time together.
At least a little bit, yeah.
So we were into like scary games. How this one went over our heads, I will never know.
Well, interestingly enough, I was so the person I watched a couple of Let's Plays, but the one that sticks out to me the most is Markiplier, actually. I watched him play this, and something that was fascinating, and it's a really good point that he brings up, and I feel like this might come up again in our conversation, is the fact that if you look at the release date for Five Nights at Freddy's, August 8th of 2014, right? This came out August 12th of 2014. So I'm not saying that Five Nights at Freddy's took the thunder, but like just before Five Nights at Freddy's, Slender the Arrival, March of 2013, and before that, Slender the 8 Pages, June of 2012. So like, it's almost like PT went into like this covert mode and then was pulled from anyone's ability to play it. You know what I mean? As quickly and mysteriously as it showed up, it was gone.
Which is terribly ironic because it's a far better horror game than those. I'm sorry. I will say it. Five Nights at Freddy's and Slender are not good games. I'll say it. Hey, look, I'm a podcaster. I'm a white guy with a microphone. I've got some hot takes. Yeah, you heard me. I said it. I'm sorry. I'm done.
I think, no, that first of all, that's very funny. I like them as games for what they are, just because the FNAF no one did the FNAF thing as much before, and usually I hate point and clicks, but like that was like the first one that I liked. But this game kicks the pants of so many horror games, especially of that generation. Slender the 8 Pages is just kind of like, it's more thrilling than it is actually scary. You know what I mean?
And, it's interesting, too, because I wanted to talk about how PT utilizes the idea of fear and compare it to those, but let's do one thing at a time a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about how you could play this game today. So we mentioned that it's not playable, so you might be thinking, well, golly, like, how can I experience this? Well, if you have a PC that can emulate, and you're privy to that, there are mods of this game, essentially ground-up reproductions. The most famous is an Unreal version built in the Unreal Engine. That is the one that I actually played. I did a mix of playing it and, also watching the Let's Plays, which I think is understandable.
Congratulations, by the way.
I sent it to you.
I know you did. I just didn't get to launch it on this computer over the last couple of days, but I'm still happy that you got to play it. I'll probably play it after this. So,
well, and that's the thing, because we're going to come into a conundrum of what is the better way to experience this work? Is it a Let's Play or is it the emulation? Because here's the thing about the modded versions. And we're going to talk more about the mods when we get into the development history, but the current modded versions, there are two that I played actually. The Unreal version is probably the best one, but the thing is it's not complete. I don't believe it has DualShock support, which is necessary for the original. It also is missing a lot of, I don't know the technical word for it, so forgive me, but it's missing a lot of atmospheric touches. For example, the cockroaches aren't there. There are just no cockroaches at all. You can't see yourself. I think when you pick up the flashlight, there's not an animation for that. The baby that's crying, I think, is still, or maybe they patched that out. I don't remember. But it's a lot of little things that aren't there that don't let the experience be 100%. But you're still playing it, whereas conversely, if you're watching a Let's Play, you can experience the full work as the developers intended, with the exception of actually playing it. So we're at this conundrum, which is better?
I mean, so speaking candidly, as somebody who consumes a lot of media, especially through YouTube, this game is not so long that it hurts to watch as a Let's Play. There are some games that are just like, Rick, I could never personally watch someone play, or rather do a Let's Play of Final Fantasy. I need to be in it. I need to be steeping myself in the characters. I need to become the person. PT is enough where there's enough repetition. It's almost meditative that you can become the person by watching, because your curiosity as a human is going to, which, I'm not putting the cart before the horse here, but as we talk about the game, I think you'll understand what I mean whenever I say meditative. Yeah, I think it's well experienced as a Let's Play right now. If a good version, a consistent version of this comes out that one can play, be it through Unreal Engine or otherwise, I would dive right in. But I would imagine that the atmosphere is pretty broken up whenever you don't get those full effects.
Well, that's the thing. I wouldn't call it broken up. It's not. How do I put this? It's like it's a 95% experience, and the 5% are the little touches, like the cockroaches crawling around and etc. So it's pretty darn close. But you are right. This game isn't too long. If you know what you're doing, you can kind of really breeze through it if you know what you're doing. But most playthroughs that I've seen take between 30 to maybe 60 minutes, but usually around 30. You shouted out Markiplier. I wanted to shout out the one that I watched, SHN, Survival Horror Network. What I really liked about that playthrough, in addition to it being, in HD and everything, and no commentary, by the way, is that they play the game as if they're doing it for the first time. So like they're exploring, they're kind of looking behind them. They're kind of walking backwards because they're scared. It's spooky. So that's a really good one. I definitely recommend it.
Another channel that does really good Let's Plays, and I don't know if they covered this game in particular, Alpha Beta Gamer. It's a similar sort of thing. You feel like you're authentically in the experience, and I have a lot of respect for people who Let's Play that way.
Yeah, when I'm most of the time when I'm looking for Let's Plays, I'm looking for no commentary Let's Plays to begin with. Mostly, not always. For PT, I would say, yeah, definitely. Unless you're specifically looking for a character to play the game, like a character like Markiplier, then stick to a no commentary one. It's just a better experience, especially with headphones.
Yeah, and I would say, I think for anybody watching it for the first time, I would recommend no commentary. Knowing what the game was from watching a little bit of previous Let's Play, I felt the need to watch someone with chaotic energy endure it. And I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of moments where Markiplier is Markiplier, where he really goes into his shtick of being scared and like the yelling. I was studying his face very carefully in this one. He was sincerely spooked at many points throughout this, and I mean, with good reason.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a very scary game. Before we move off of how we played it, I do want to lightly suggest to the listeners, if you're interested in playing this in 2022 or whenever you might be hearing this, try it both ways. If you're able to emulate it, or you have a friend that has it on PS4, try that as well as a Let's Play. Particularly if you're emulating it. If you can play it on PS4, then you're golden. That's like that's the standard. It's the gold standard. That's the Michael Jordan of PT. The Michael Jordan of PT is PS4. I've said this for years. I mean, if anybody knows one thing about me, it's that Michael Jordan is the PT of the PS4. Or wait,
Rick,
you know what I mean.
You've been saying that Michael Jordan is the PT of PlayStation 4 as long as I've known you. I mean, how many times would we be walking around Cogswell and you would say PT is the PlayStation 4 of Michael Jordan?
I appreciate you also further flipping the analogy around. Peak comedy. You don't just come to PPR for peak game discussions. You come for the peak comedy.
You come because Michael Jordan is the PlayStation 4 of PT. You know it. You all know it. I know you're listening and you're all going, I don't know if he's right. I am absolutely correct whenever I say that PlayStation 4 is Michael Jordan for PT.
Oh, we've got to get a little lighthearted. This is a spooky one.
It is a spooky one, and we've been kind of beating around the proverbial bush for a while here. So, shall we begin with some developmental and, audio, visual commentary on how we felt about this game?
Yeah, we've built it up enough that I think it's time that we actually talk about the history a little bit. So as we said at the beginning, this playable teaser, this playable trailer, was released on the PlayStation Network on August 12th of 2014. It was a free download, and it was attributed to 7780 Studios. Now, this studio doesn't have anything else under its name because it was an anonymous studio. Kojima purposely used a pseudonym, a fake name. I did read that it was announced at Gamescom 2014, but everybody that I've talked to who was aware of PT at the time doesn't remember this. So it's unclear how widespread this press conference was. But there certainly wasn't a big trailer. There wasn't a big announcement. This released in hushed tones. And that was all part of the design. Kojima wanted this to be released without fanfare. He didn't want his name attached to it, aside from the very ending. This was all purposeful. This was an artistic decision.
A very fascinating artistic decision at that. I'm not sure of the you were texting me earlier, Richard, about something regarding Kojima and Konami. So I'll be curious to hear that little story in time.
Yeah, that gets pretty messy, but it plays a huge part into this. This was developed in the Fox engine, which was built by Kojima Production Studios, which is 7780 Studios. This is the same engine that Metal Gear Solid 5, both Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain run on. Weirdly enough, this is also the engine that Pro Soccer Evolution runs on, which, okay, that's cool.
LOL.
Now, when we talk about this game was largely in the hands of two people, but a third icon was also involved.
The other, should I say individual that was involved in the creation of this?
I don't think we've said any names yet.
So while the game was directed and designed by Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro was involved in the creation of this game, which, if you're sitting there saying, oh, Guillermo del Toro, what is he known for? He did Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, The Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, Blade 2. He's done quite a few things. Significant in Hollywood, to be honest. Just very intense work he puts out.
Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth has been, I mean, not a favorite movie of mine for a long time, but I really like that movie. It's the pale man from that movie gave me nightmares as a kid. Like it's a very good movie, and so is Hellboy. This it's unclear to what extent this individual was involved, but Junji Ito was also part of this creative team. That's right, the Junji Ito of horror manga fame. The guy that's always so smiley and so kind that draws the most horrific body horror eldritch monstrosities you've ever seen. It's incredible to me that we almost got a game featuring the three of these people.
I'm not familiar with Junji as a whole. Oh, wait a second. I think I've had friends throw... Yeah, okay. Nope. I saw something online of his once and I just about crapped my pants.
It's very good. It's really nice.
God, now everything makes sense. I didn't realize he was involved. Okay, everybody, goodbye.
So this game was largely a sort of teaser for the upcoming game Silent Hills. Kojima he didn't want to just release a trailer for this, he wanted to release something interactive, and he wanted it to scare players in a unique way. So he released a trailer that was interactive, one that you could play. He did it under a fake studio name. You only realized it was him if somebody else told you, if you looked it up after the fact, or if you beat it. No press, like largely, no fanfare. And then some game design decisions too, which we can sort of talk about. All of this caused this not perversely, but all of this tiptoeing caused this to shoot into the zeitgeist more than you would expect. People were talking about this big time.
And it's amazing, Rick, that as we're talking about it now, that that this is one of those things where I've been watching people play through this game before I even knew what it was. You know what I mean? Like I would just watch people play scary games because I like them, and I had no idea that this was what it was. Silent Hill is... I could sit here and just kind of ramble for an hour and a half about Silent Hill as a whole thing, but I'm just going to volley the ball back to you before I go off the rails.
So I've actually never played a Silent Hill game, and you might be thinking, well, I haven't either, so maybe I shouldn't play PT. No worries there. Not only did Kojima add a disclaimer at the end of this saying that this teaser is independent of Silent Hills, but Silent Hills itself, it's... I don't want to say it's wholly unrelated because we don't really know, but I've seen it said that it wasn't going to be a sort of, it would be a fine jumping in point. But certainly the trailer, the PT, is a fine jumping in point. It's not related explicitly, let's say, to Silent Hill.
You're not starting in a conversation that has already begun. You are starting a new conversation when you play this. It's as confusing as any sort of scary horror game is. Whenever you start off, you're like, "What? Why am I doing what I'm doing?" But no, it very well stands on its own. It's not like you're starting, The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It's essentially its own IP. So
yeah, correct.
So do jump in if you're interested. So this game is short enough that I think we could probably talk about how it plays while we talk about our experiences with it. So let's talk about the Kojima Konami drama that went down. It is impossible to talk about this game without talking about this whole ordeal.
Rick, baby, I need to give this all to you because I didn't know about this, so you take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so to preface this, I'm not like a huge fan of Kojima. I don't dislike him. I don't engage with what he does, really. But I think it's safe to say he kind of got shafted here. But let's talk a little bit about it. This could be an episode in and of itself. So if I got stuff wrong, please forgive me. I did my best to cross-check and corroborate, but shout out to IGN for compelling the timeline in a succinct way. I think everything is right. I did my best to cross-reference, but here's what happened. So as we said, this game was released in August of 2014. March of 2015, rumors started to spread because Konami removed Kojima's name and the Kojima Productions logo from their website and confirmed in a statement that they were going to be rebranding to Konami Digital Entertainment. Shortly thereafter, it became known that Kojima and his team were planning on leaving after The Phantom Pain once their contract ended in December. Now, the interesting thing is, the very next day, a series of job listings for a new Metal Gear game, a new installment in the series, appeared via Konami. That very same day, Kojima and Konami released a joint statement saying that Kojima will remain and finish out The Phantom Pain. Like, he will see it to its completion. So right off the bat, we're kind of in a sticky situation. On the 25th of the same month, Konami canceled a Kojima Station broadcast. I'm unclear on what that is, actually. But the next day, Konami released another statement that Kojima is still involved in The Phantom Pain. They're doing a lot of reassuring. They're doing a lot of, that backpedaling marketing business. But they would not confirm that Kojima was still employed at their company or if he was working on a contract. They were still removing his name from things as they were going on. On the 31st, so this is all within like a week, on the 31st, Konami pulled the Kojima Productions logo from the Silent Hills website, said it was for rebranding, did not provide clarification. This is all in just a week.
Yikes.
25th of April, Konami pulled PT from PSN, and it was officially delisted on April 29th. And then, on the 27th, in the interim, Konami officially canceled Silent Hills and also removed themselves from the New York Stock Exchange. This was described by many as, quote, frustratingly tone-deaf after the massive success of PT as this icon of mystery and horror. It was so successful, and it built up Silent Hills in such a huge way, and it was just canceled. Del Toro, I think to this day, is still pretty pissed about it. He said it was the most baffling decision. He said it made no sense. He said that he and Kojima and the team were having a blast. Like, he's still pissed about it. He has a great quote. I'll find it. No official reasoning behind the falling out was given from Konami, of course, or from Kojima. Kojima's been pretty diplomatic about it. It was more than likely due to Konami wanting to rebrand and chase the low-risk, high-profit of mobile gaming, like cell phone gaming. Yeah, it's pretty shitty. This was almost exclusively a financial move because their CEOs were obsessed with mobile games because it's such a cash grab, especially with kids. And Konami, outside of Metal Gear, they had abandoned Castlevania. They had abandoned some of their most popular franchises. Like, I don't know what they're doing. But, here it is. Del Toro has this fantastic quote where he says, the indie gaming scene is only limited by the bastards with the money, which is beautiful because, by all accounts, and you've just heard me kind of harriedly recount this tale, I can't see how Kojima is in the wrong on this one. I really can't.
No, Konami, using all of their power and influence, really just decided that they were going to go their own way. And I don't know. I think of a lot of companies that are supposed to be creative and are supposed to be engaging and supposed to have their hand on the pulse of who's playing the games. They're supposed to have their ears open. And whenever you're going for cheap cell phone games on which you can pump in as much advertising as possible and make as much money as possible, and then you have something as wildly successful and popular and has drummed up a lot of excitement as PT with the idea of Silent Hills coming out, you're just gonna, I don't know. I have a friend named Brian, and for Brian, he ended up buying a Wii U, getting ready to buy the next Legend of Zelda game, Breath of the Wild. And what ended up happening was basically nothing. Breath of the Wild came out for the Wii U, but not with the same amount of fanfare as it did for the Switch, and not even with the same playability, cohesion as a whole. So, like, all of this to say, Nintendo kind of screwed the pooch with that one, with not having any main Zelda titles for the Wii U. Same kind of thing here, you know, like it's shortcutting, it's making as much money as possible. Not a fan of this kind of stuff from a company. And don't get me wrong, money is a necessary evil, but I don't know. You had a great artist like Del Toro involved in dislike.
And another wrinkle to the fold is that, well, there are a couple of wrinkles to the fold. One, Kojima was an employee of their company for over 30 years. Like, he had been pretty damn loyal to them. And up until that point, as far as I could tell, they had a great relationship. Like, Kojima is kind of known for doing Kojima bullshit, and they gave him a platform and money to do it. And, you know, every game of his that he's made, for the most part, has been super successful. So, you know, a lot of people call it Kojima bullshit, but, like, the numbers don't lie. People are buying and loving these games. Guillermo del Toro had an interest in working in games. He had only worked on 2 before, both of which were scrapped during production, and he was like, you know, maybe this will be the one. And he got fucked. The light at the end of the tunnel is that this caused Kojima to break away from Konami and create Kojima Studio Productions, which of course created Death Stranding, that also featured Guillermo del Toro. It also featured Norman Reedus. We didn't mention that, but Norman Reedus is the player character in PT.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Death Stranding, people love it or hate it.
Like Kojima.
Yeah, very much like Kojima. But again, it's a massive success. There's no denying that.
No, I mean, the fact that people talk about games that they love and hate, like people do that over a lot of the giants and a lot of games that exist, he's still won. You know what I mean? It's just a shame that PT had to be sacrificed. I don't know. I'm disappointed.
This, man, I am too. I'm not even, you know, like I said, I don't have loyalty to Kojima, but it's so shitty. Like, this is a perfect example of capitalism does not promote the growth of art. It just doesn't. It can't. Related to this, we were talking about the modding scene earlier, and I said we'd get back to it. There was one modder in particular named Kimsar that got so close to recreating PT, so close that Konami reached out. I don't know if it was an official cease and desist, but they reached out and said, hey, you can't do this. This needs to stop.
Whoa.
But interestingly, the rep that, or whoever that Kimsar was talking to, they were just talking as people at one point, and they were like, yeah, you know, it's such a good reproduction that it like inspired members of the staff. Like, it got people talking about it again. It got people excited again. And it's just, you know, on one hand, it brings in this notion that, like, you know, companies are evil, sure, but sometimes real people work for them. But again, it's so frustrating that we so often see good art like this just crushed because of a profit, right? It's like you said, it's a necessary evil. It's a necessary thing. That's why the whole system is frustrating. We're back to this again. Like, hey everybody, if you weren't tired of leftism after Night in the Woods, buckle up, because here we go.
Well, and here we go, and here goes the one who is me. Sorry, I feel like I have to purr happily at least once every episode.
Dude, oh my God, I purred happily. One of the great side characters of all time.
So here is my frustration in words. Capitalism does not promote art. Yeah, okay, let's look at, you know, my favorite example of this, and I'll talk about this till the cows come home. It's the Disney company. That's
right. They just did their new, what is it, D23, D25?
They did D23 and it was a joke. So
I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. No, it is D23 because that's the year that the Disney company formally founded. Walt Disney dies in the 60s. Roy finishes Walt Disney World in Florida, dies 6 months afterwards. The company is kind of in disarray for the next 14, 15, 16 years. The company is almost bought and then broken into different factions and sold off by someone who is trying to commit greenmail. And then Michael Eisner comes into power, and he works with a man named Frank Wells, who was the Roy to his Walt. and Michael Eisner goes to the Imagineers, and the Imagineers are all afraid they're going to lose their jobs because Disney was in great financial constraints with the fact that, you know, they've just been threatened to be bought up and cut up and distributed. And Michael Eisner looks at all of the Imagineers and he goes, all right, guys, I don't have very long. I've got to tell you, and everyone again is sweating. He just says, you guys are the creatives. You're the most important part of this company. So I'm going to ask you to keep going even harder, double down on your creative processes. And yeah, I'll see you next week. And just left. And all of the employees sat there and went, what? Michael Eisner comes out with, you know, these Disney Channel movies that you can now buy at home because originally you couldn't have VHSs of your favorite movies. Michael Eisner starts the Disney Renaissance, starting with The Little Mermaid, ending with Tarzan. All of those movies in between were all him. He went absolutely insane in the creative processes, and Frank Wells balanced him out. And, you know, they were financially successful, but they were creative, and they took those kinds of risks. That was the beauty. I mean, now you look at the Disney company and the last D23, it's all of these blue sky ideas. It's just, you know, they're kind of pitching ideas to people instead of telling people the things they're going to do. And it's not original anymore. It's so disappointing, and it's all money grabbing, and it's like watching a blimp with a giant hole in it fall into the sea because it used to be such a great creative company.
And not to continue on the Disney shitfest, but a big reason,
Please.
a big reason that Kingdom Hearts turned out the way that it did was because of Disney's interference. After the first one, from what I understand, they were like, oh, we're not so hot on the idea of Final Fantasy and Disney anymore. And I think up to the point that like Kingdom Hearts 3 is almost exclusively Disney, if not entirely Disney, and then original characters. So it's like, it's just really frustrating. And outside of Disney too, talking about Kojima and Konami, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, that released amidst all of this. It released amidst all of this drama and shenanigans, and it is a profoundly unfinished game. Don't get me wrong, it's a full game. Like, it's, you know, you're getting your 30, 40 hours out of it. But the end is wrapped up so quickly and disheveledly. It's a lot of gamers were frustrated, and they were like, okay, so this is because Konami is rushing him out the door. You know, it's a real shame, man. It's a real shame that too often this stuff happens because of the bottom line. You know, companies chasing a penny, companies chasing their bottom line just to put out, you know, shallow, heartless dribble that doesn't work. This isn't entirely related, and I don't know why I thought of this, but thinking about the saxophone, one of the first works was written by one of the first solo works that's still played often was written by Claude Debussy, and it was paid for by a patron. Like, this woman approached him, named Elise Hall. I should say her name because she's important. She paid him to write this, and Debussy fucking hated the saxophone. He wrote all the time about how he doesn't think it's a worthwhile instrument, so much so that the piece itself is titled Rhapsody for Orchestra and Saxophone, even though the saxophone part is, and that whole story is funny in and of itself. But it got done, even though Debussy hated it. It got done, and it's a worthwhile piece of art. And it's funny because that was patron funded exclusively. And even though Debussy hated it, it's still a worthwhile piece of art. Meanwhile, the parallel is we've got a company throwing all this money to create shallow garbage to chase a profit, and it has no substance. I don't know, man. It's a loose connection. I'm just spitballing. I'm just talking here because white guy with a podcast. But it's just, you know, it's enough to make you want to spit, man.
You know, Rick, it sounds like this could be some subject matter for our episode on November 10, just saying. I don't know if it necessarily counts as broken and buggy, but it is at least soulless. If I might put a bow on the Disney portion of this, just something else that you may or may not have known. not just you, but our listeners, the end of the Disney Renaissance. And all of this, at this point, there was a man after Frank Wells had tragically died in a helicopter crash. The person who was in charge of most of the animated movies, Jeffrey Katzenberg, was really vying to be the next Frank Wells and to take that position and work alongside Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner chose somebody else. So Jeffrey Katzenberg left, and with such a bad taste in his mouth for all things fairy tale and Disney movies, what movie did he go on to help produce? But Shrek. Bet you weren't expecting Shrek to show up in an episode about PT now, were you, kids?
Beautiful. Oh, I'm sure there's a mod somewhere. There's got to be.
Sorry. I'm dreaming big.
I can picture it. It reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen these Gary's Mod things where people will mod into the game Gary's Mod. Pictures of like Obunga chasing them. It's very funny. I think about buying Gary's Mod frequently just to have Obunga chasing me all the while a sound file going, Joe Biden plays. It's very good. That's so funny. So we've kind of talked about the Kojima drama. It released, did super well. All of that went down. It got pulled. We should say, you cannot play this on a PS5 currently. They have recently come out and said, like, this will not be playable on here. Tough luck. Somebody recently, I think as recently as last week, jailbroke their PS5.
Ooh.
And now you can't play PT, but they were able to download it. So it's there.
Fascinating. It is worth mentioning that this game does look and sound incredible. Like graphically, from sound effects, the music and choice to subtract music it's masterful. I hate to use that word again, but like unbelievable. Like some horror games you get a little bit like tropey, you get a little bit like cheesy, you get a little bit predictable. This one I was not ready for like anything. Even watching someone else playing, I was like mildly sweating.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over how it looks and how it sounds, but that's a perfect opportunity to segue us into what happens when you play the game. So let's talk about it. So this game, you play from the POV of your character, which you find out is Norman Reedus towards the end. But
Norman Reedus diabetes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, kinda. It rhymes.
That's all it does.
But you're playing POV, and the setting is almost entirely two hallways that sort of join each other in the shape of an L. There is 2 rooms that you can go into.
Technically.
But otherwise, this is essentially the entire setting. And I gotta say, I think it looks just terrific.
I have said this, and I will say this until the end of time. As far as console games, as far as video game consoles go, PlayStation will always have the best graphics. And you might be sitting there saying, well, they use similar engines. I don't give 3 shits. Something about what PlayStation does makes these games just look S tier.
It's a very atmospheric looking game. The hallway is lit by these, at times dim, at times off, and at times, we'll just say malfunctioning lights. There is a lone chandelier sort of swinging in the entranceway to the house that kind of is in the middle of the one prong of the L.
This is a formal Willy alert. I have the Willies. Please continue.
Uh-oh. Willy alert, everybody. Surprised we made it almost an hour in and this is the first one.
Well, I'm looking at an image and I'm thinking about the hallway with Rick. I know we've talked about things before. I've had a lot of things happen to me that have been less than able to be explained by normal things, and like a chandelier that's moving on its own. Like I've seen rocking chairs move on their own. and like coat hangers move on their own, and it's really great job with this haunted corridor sort of thing.
Yeah, it looks great. There's not a lot of music. Most of this is just sound. And so this game takes place in a sort of series of loops. And what we mean by that is you get to the end of the hallway, you go through a door, you're back at where you started. That's how the game plays. So let's talk about the first loop, because all the first loop is you walking from where you start to the very end and then repeat.
So you do begin in this concrete room. Just four walls, floor, ceiling, all concrete. There's a light overhead, I believe. You walk into this first part of the hallway where it's quiet. You can hear a radio playing something in the distance. You know, you see doors that you can't open. There's a clock that says 23:59. It's military time, so it's a minute till midnight. You see pictures on the walls and pictures on the end tables. These are important, apparently. You walk down and just, first of all, what a way to begin. The chandelier is like, I think, moving gently, and then you hear this person on the radio talking about someone who's committed familicide.
Yeah, it's they're describing a 9/11 call, which is a weird way to say 911. It reminds me of that one tragedy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's my favorite Norm Macdonald bit, I think, ever, and I just had to include it in some way.
Well, you did it. It's okay.
Don't laugh at 9/11. Okay. But another thing to mention, too, is that the hallways are littered with copious amounts of beer bottles, cigarette butts, prescription pills. It's unclear if somebody had an addiction of some sort or if somebody wasn't in great mental shakes. But the house is dilapidated. There are signs of substance abuse everywhere. It's worn down, and a lot of the pictures are in disarray too, increasingly so as we go on.
And from varying eras, the pictures are kind of, some look recent, some look very old, some look like the 80s. I don't know.
Yeah, it did look kind of 80s to me.
Yeah, even though the game clearly is taking place in, quote, modern times, stylistically looking around at things. Yeah,
my assumption was the happy married photo was from the 80s, and then, whatever present day was 30 years later. So what ends up happening is you make your way past the radio, you hear about the father who murdered his wife and kids with a shotgun or a rifle, inconsequential detail, but
right.
You walk to the end. There is a set of stairs. You go down through a door, and then you're right back where you started once you exited the first concrete room. So this starts a series of loops. This game, playing it, I don't think what we're going to do is go through and describe each puzzle in detail, because that sounds a little too tedious, but this is a series of puzzles that you do throughout the loops. And each loop will change based on how you're progressing through these puzzles. So let me ask you this, what did you think of this gameplay approach?
So I'm going to be honest, I didn't recognize all of the puzzles per se, as puzzles. Some of them just seem like things you need to do versus puzzles. There's one that is very puzzly to me. I love this approach because you never know what you're going to get. And whenever you are in the hallway enough times and it's calm, it's not like it's there to shock you. It's just because there's a lot of jump scares that are kind of cheap that way. It really just, it puts you in this state of unknowing and unsettled and insecure, and putting these, quote, puzzles juxtaposed with all of this really makes it, I don't know if feeling real is the way to put it. I love this approach. I would not have thought of an approach quite like this, and especially using a hallway that's just perpetual. Ugh.
I think that's part of why this game is so successful in eliciting fear. We can maybe talk about how this handles fear differently than FNAF, or particularly at two games that we've done on the show before, Amnesia and at Dead of Night. But this game uses such a small amount of real estate to promote this idea of familiarity, and then breaks it as you go on, sometimes little by little, sometimes in large chunks. But I wanted to mention, you said that you didn't see some of these as puzzles except for one. The last puzzle is notorious, and we will get there because that's as Kojima bullshit as this thing gets. But you are right. Some of these, for example, the first puzzle, quote unquote, is you are going through the loop and you see the door at the end that you're supposed to go through. It's shut, or excuse me, it's open. You're walking forward, the door shuts. So you walk up to it and you hear a door open behind you. Now you go back, suddenly the bathroom door is open, wasn't open before. You go, you look at it, you peer in, and a horrific ghost of a woman or something that looks like a woman just slams the door shut, which is really spooked me. And then the door at the very end opens. So that's kind of the first one. Not a puzzle insofar as, like, there's only a limited number of things you can really do at this point. So there is that, but again, we'll get to the last puzzle in a minute, but that's kind of how most of these go.
And the way that they present this woman, who I believe her name is Lisa.
Yep.
The way that they present these things is it doesn't feel like it's just setty-uppy. It very much feels like, all right, this door's closed, this door's open. I guess I'll go see what's in this door. And if you're not, like, looking the right way, you will not organically encounter, like, you will not organically encounter Lisa. But my God, whenever she shows up, it's like, there's not, like, some, like, booming sound that goes with it. It's underscored. It's just, I don't know. I'm still pissed that this game isn't real, but anyway.
One of my favorite ways that you can encounter her is, so as you're walking through the one prong of the capital L, you get to a sort of entranceway to the house, and if you look up, you can see a banister. Like, you can't go up the stairs, but you can see the upstairs, you know what I mean? And in the darkness, you can just make her out, standing there, like, looking directly at you. And then she'll, like, back away. And it's missable. Like, you don't have to look at her, I'm pretty sure. It's very good.
Heebie-jeebies. That's Willie's count number 2, everybody.
What are some other moments going through this that you were really into?
Yeah, I was gonna say I hate to, like, minimize this, but this is basically the game is just walking through the hall in its many forms. So
it's very much a game that's better experienced than just hearing us, sort of talk about it. But we are going to tell you about what we liked.
Honestly, and we should have said this earlier, watching a Let's Play of this will take less time than listening to us talk about this game, which is not to say you shouldn't do both. But yeah, you should definitely experience this game and watch it and feel it for yourself. One of the moments that got me, so I hate whenever, like, ghosts do, like, the whole, like, shaking and twitching in an unnatural way thing. Like, it doesn't always get me. Like, it doesn't unsettle me. But there's a moment where, like, you're walking around in the hallway and, like, nothing's happening. You're like, what's going on? And you go over to a window and this Lisa person is just with this just soulless grin, twitching uncontrollably at the window, like, inches away from you. And this is the expression she wears all of the time. It's very, very, very disturbing appearance. And with the beauty of the PlayStation 4's graphics, you feel like this person could exist.
You feel even more that she can exist at certain points because she can get you. She can sort of attack you, and that brings you back and restarts that particular save state. One thing that we didn't mention is this game, in both its modded form and the original form, you can't, like, I don't think you can save and quit. I know on the modded versions you can't, but at each loop, it saves for you. So you won't have to do everything again if you get caught. But I also don't think, like, it's not something you can save and come back to, like, 2 days later.
That sounds right. What were some of your favorite times in the loop other than seeing her up in the banister?
There were a couple. I mean, I think they're all really good. I mentioned earlier the bathroom. At a certain point, the bathroom will open, and you go in. That's where you get a flashlight. The door closes behind you, and you can't open it. But in the sink, there is this like humanoid but kind of bird-looking fetus.
Yes.
That is crying. This is another point that some of the mods don't get right. Some of the mods, this doesn't move at all. Some of the mods, it's not crying correctly. It's not quite right. But it's very bizarre.
You hear it crying in the bathroom. In that earlier scene we were talking about, whenever the bathroom door opens, you can hear something crying in there, like a baby crying, and then the door slams, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. The baby crying plays a big part in all of this. And that's because the woman that this person on the radio announcement killed, I believe she was pregnant. So that's kind of playing into this imagery.
It's... Have you seen any of the Silent Hill movies, Rick?
No, never.
They are also very difficult with really extreme imagery, but not like extreme as in just gore, like very difficult things to experience through your senses. My opinion, anyway. During one of the resets, you can experience this strange, bloody, moving paper bag. Is during one of the resets, is it not? Like one of the times whenever the ghost gets you, you reawaken in the concrete room.
Oh, yeah. I might not have gotten that, but yeah, I don't think I got that.
That's okay. In the playthrough I watched, Markiplier was very confused. I was confused. And I was like, oh yeah, Guillermo del Toro. This bloody paper bag speaks to you, and it tells you of this... It tells you of some pretty disturbing stuff, but then there's this quote that's seen at the start of the game, which is, watch out, the gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
Yeah. That is how the game begins, and you get a lot of these sort of cryptic messages that on their own don't really mean a whole lot, and we may never know what they were intended to mean, unfortunately. Speaking of the messages that you get, there is one that begins to appear at the top of the loop door, at the very end that you go through to initiate the loop. It'll appear scrawled on the walls at the top that says, "Forgive me, Lisa, there's a monster inside of me." Ostensibly written by the murderer. I believe this happens after one of the loops where you look at their marriage portrait and there's like a shot in the eye of the woman, who I'm assuming is Lisa. And then, of course, there's the hanging fridge, which was maybe my favorite image in the game.
It's intense, man.
It's bizarre. You walk forward, and hanging from the ceiling in like the entranceway is this old, busted up refrigerator that is like leaking blood.
And the baby's crying from inside of it.
Yes, the baby is crying from inside of it. Which becomes clear on the next loop whenever it's thrashing around and the crying is much more intense.
Yeah, it's a very... I know I've said unsettling a lot, but it's very, very unsettling.
That hanging fridge part is also where you see the message, "I can hear them calling to me from," and then part of that puzzle is solving the end of that, which becomes, "I can hear them calling to me from hell."
Yes.
And that completes that loop.
During one of the loops, there is a message playing from the 1938 radio drama The War of the Worlds, and it's in Swedish.
I don't... Is it from that, or is it just referencing that? I
think it's referencing it. I think it's only referencing it.
I gotcha.
This is what the voice says. At least this is the translation, because you are not going to hear me speak Swedish today. I'm sorry.
To hear that,
but we have a Patreon.
Patreon.com.
You had the same thought as me.
We're in the same wavelength.
But if you'd like to give money to hear me speak Swedish, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you'll hear me speak Swedish. So here's the translation. I'm so glad you tracked with me. I'm so glad. That's amazing. Close your eyes. Let your ears listen to the radio. Do you hear my voice? Can you hear your own soul's scream? Let us choose. My voice that tells the future, or your tortured... Well, what do you choose? You can choose. Your life, your future, wise as you are, you might already have discovered it. Yes, the radio drama from 75 years ago was true. They are here on our Earth, and they monitor and see all. Don't trust anyone, don't trust the police. They are already controlled by them. That's the way it has been for 75 years now. Only our best. You have a right to become one of us. So, welcome to our world. Very soon, the gates to a new dimension will open. 204863. 204863.
Man, and it's this kind of atmospheric setup that makes me so just. I'm so upset that we'll never get this.
Oh my god, because it's getting into this interdimensional play and like, what is happening? What are we experiencing? Are we in the world as we know it, or are we in a parallel?
And what is the role of extraterrestrials here? I'm also a big fan of whenever they take when good writers will take historical events and kind of use them as an impetus for things going very wrong. And that's kind of what they're doing here with War of the Worlds.
Oh yeah. It's a disturbing little invitation into something else that is you're apparently privy to, but you're not because it's in Swedish, so it's almost kind of you could argue it's subliminal, but anyway. I love these loops. It really knocks you off kilter. You don't know which way anything's going to go, and it makes for some good spookins.
One of the next loops involves infinite red hallways. Before, I'd mentioned that using the familiarity of a looping hallway is part of what makes this so unnerving, because you become so familiar with it and things are changing, and it's an enclosed, small space, so you notice every little thing. The infinite red hallways is where it really shifts, because your vision is sort of blurry. Blurry is not the right word. It's kind of
distorted.
Distorted. Everything is red. The hallways have changed. It's the same. They look the same, but now you turn left, and then you can turn right, and they seem to just keep going. Also, and this is big, you run in this one. You can't run up to this point. Now you're running.
You sprint.
So we're questioning, like, what is happening here? And this, I think if we had to assign a climax to this game, it might be here, because the way to get out of this loop is, and I know we said we're not going to do this, but like, it's very cool. It's very cool imagery. But the way to get out of this loop is you find a sort of peephole in the wall and you observe it. You zoom into it, and it has you looking into the bathroom. And all you hear is like I can't remember if you hear arguing outright, like actual arguing, but you hear crying, etc., and then you hear gunshots. Presumably Lisa being murdered.
Isn't it sad and kind of unsettling and weird? And it's probably the 5th time I've said unsettling, and there's the 6th. That like this is how you progress. It's not like, yes, I've collected this collectible. Yes, I've solved this thing. It's, yes, I've listened to my wife get killed. Like, or, I'm listening to a baby cry from inside of a fridge. Or, I'm being pursued by this banshee poltergeist.
Yeah, and I mean, it is peculiar, and it makes this idea of exploration, which is also incredibly important for horror games, it puts it at the forefront, which is, important. The reason that I call this the climax is because you get, from that scene in the peephole, you get pulled back automatically, and the wall will have the message on it that says, "No turning back now," and this is going to put you into the final loop of the game. Before you get to the final loop, when you're walking around, the game sort of seems like it starts crashing. Like you get like, I don't know what it's called, when the frame looks like it's not in line with each other, like it's cut down the middle and they're misplaced.
This is classic Silent Hill, yeah.
But eventually you get like this death screen, like a bright yellow screen, and it says, "I'll call later," just in a ton of different languages. and it fills the screen. And that puts us into the very infamous final puzzle.
The final puzzle, if I'm not mistaken, is that finding the pieces of the picture?
No, actually finding the pieces of the picture is optional.
I didn't know that. Okay, then I should not have watched Markiplier, LOL.
I mean, you can do it. I think it prevents an attack from Lisa, but it is technically optional. You don't have to do it.
Then help me out with that final puzzle, Richard.
No, the final puzzle is the one where there are 3 baby laughs that you have to get. So, before we talk about this, let's talk a little bit about Kojima's vision. So, we mentioned before that Kojima wanted to release this. He wanted to have everything about this play into the horror. So that's why he released it under a pseudonym. That's why he didn't do any press conferences. That's why so much of the game doesn't tell you how to do anything. Now, this last puzzle. Some people will call Kojima brilliant for this. Some will call it absolute bullshit. I'm torn on how I feel. Because
lay it on me. I've got my gavel.
To solve this puzzle, you have to meet a series of very specific commands that the game does not tell you or even so much as hint at how to do. And I'm not making this up, but it is literally like walk 10 paces forward, and on the 10th pace, you have to stop. And then, to get the second one, you have to, into your microphone that is plugged into your DualShock controller, you have to say a name starting with J, or you have to say Lisa. It's actually pretty unclear as to how to get the second one. And then, to get the third one, you have to walk another paces and stop immediately. Don't move. You can't move anything. You can't even move the controller because it's gyroscopic. And like all of these very unclear, obfuscated, obtuse, purposefully hidden instructions to complete this puzzle. I think it is not controversial to say doing something like that is bad game design, right? I think there's a notion in game design. If you want the game to not hold your hand and not tell you what to do, you have to design the game in a way that it teaches you without telling you. The example that is constantly touted in regards to this that just I'm so tired of hearing about is Dark Souls, right? But the thing about Dark Souls is if you pay attention to how the game is playing and how the levels are set up, it teaches you exactly how to play. It's great level design. And I always like to say in that sense, Dark Souls is actually pretty easy if you pay attention to what the game is telling you, which is funny. But anyways, that is good game design. This is bad game design because you're not only wanting the game not to teach you what to do, but you're not giving a clear or logical set of instructions on how to proceed, right? That seesaw is imbalanced. It's both are just turned all the way down.
I think this is more permissible if you had been rewarded for not moving at other points in the game.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
That would be the game teaching you, right?
Right, and that's why I think that this, as much as I like it, and I like the happenstance approach, and I really do like happenstance, like things that just happen because it does. There comes a point where if you can't progress because you have 3 happenstance things, that's a little bit bullshit.
But here's the thing, and here's the main thing that's keeping me from saying this is just outright bullshit. If any genre is going to play with this, it's going to be horror, right? So already, it's not a pass, but already it's like, okay, kind of, I want to see where you go with this. I don't know if this was Kojima's intent, but what this did, from all accounts, is it sent the internet into a frenzy. This is all people could talk about. This took people weeks to figure out.
Oh my god, he's a genius.
This pushed. Well,
he's
maybe,
a genius, everybody.
Maybe he might be. This pushed the game into the zeitgeist, and they didn't have to do any marketing. This is all people could talk about, is how to solve this final puzzle. Now we're at this crossroads, we're at this crux, where it's like, is objectively bad game design okay if it's to a point? And if so, does this point justify the bad game design? I don't know how I feel about it, because if he planned it this way, I gotta say, especially in a horror game, that's pretty fucking cool. But at the same time, I can't imagine playing this by myself in 2014 being like, how the hell do I beat this? What do I do?
Yeah, no, it's genius from I'm going to drum up excitement and get people interested in this. Is it a pain in the ass? Yes. Is it a horror game, so this is kind of passable? Yeah. Is it ultimately at its core, is there bullshit involved? Yes. But the idea of him doing it isn't bullshit. I think the fact that it's 3 different things, and the fact that, they don't necessarily, again, they're all happenstance. Like, people would have to sit there and try for hours and hours and hours and hours to try to figure out, okay, so I'm standing here, and I've realized that this is like the reset point. Now I need to walk 10 paces this way. Okay, I've tried 1, I've tried 2, I've tried 3, I've tried 4, I've tried 5. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot, especially for someone playing a trailer.
And the first thing that I thought of, I thought the exact same thing. And then the first thing I thought of and that I saw online were some people were saying like, well, I don't know how to get the second baby laugh. Maybe this is just random. And I was like, well, what if he would have just made it random? Then people wouldn't have been talking about it as much.
Exactly. Oh, when did your baby laugh happen? Oh, after 15 minutes. How about yours?
Right. So it becomes this thing. It's like, yes, he did this bad thing, this objectively bad way to make a puzzle, but it took this game that they wanted to create as much intrigue and mystery around as possible and made it the center of attention. There's a big part of me that thinks that is brilliant.
I think pound for pound it is brilliant. Man.
And do you know why it's brilliant? Because once you solve it, once you get that third baby laugh and you do all the things, the phone rings, and you pick it up, and it says, you have been chosen. The game goes to black, and then you get this ending scene. I'm not sure if this is the town of Silent Hills or not, but you have your player character, Norman Reedus, actually in view, walking through this desolate, empty town at twilight, at midnight. And this is the first time in the entire game you see the name Hideo Kojima come up. Guillermo del Toro, Norman Reedus. And as he walks away, it fades to white, and the title comes up, Silent Hills. And that's it.
Damn.
Like, it's very cool. I don't know if I 100% jive with the Kojima-ness of it, but I cannot deny that it's very cool.
It's very cool. Quick shout out to Ludwig Forsell, who did the music for this game, which is, again, very atmospheric. He also did Death Stranding, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
There's a lot of 80s bops in Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain.
Yeah. So he was apparently working very intimately with Kojima and Del Toro. So it's kind of nice that they still did things together, even though what would have been an actual monster piece would have just, taken over the world.
Honestly, I mean, it very well may have. This game is still, to this day, frequently cited as the scariest game of all time. It doesn't have any sort of like real critical consensus because numbers for it don't exist, but like it very frequently is brought up by very respectable people. It's incredible that they could do this with a 30-minute, if you know what you're doing, game. And it's the legacy is still ongoing almost 10 years later. It's and we will never see the finished product. It's in some ways that's beautiful. The fact that we will never see it, it's a beautiful tragedy.
It is. It's sort of like somewhere out there is Louis Viern's 7th Organ Symphony. He started one in C# minor, but died before he could finish it.
It's a very metal key.
Oh my gosh, death metal C# minor is. But you get pieces like that, and you get work like that, and that's what this game is. It is a piece of art, and we've said it here a million times that we believe that video games are a legitimate art form, and I think you are right. I think there is beauty in the fact that this is what it is. You know what I mean? It's almost like the Church of St. John the Divine in New York City. Its nickname is St. John's the Unfinished because the nave, like the crossing, the center of the church is just uncarved stone. It's really fascinating. The rest of it is extremely opulent and beautiful.
Do you think that you were the first person to ever compare PT to the Church of St. John?
I can guarantee it.
It's a pretty cool feeling, isn't it? Don't you think? You came up with a truly original sentence. I
don't think that there are many organists who are into video games, so I kind of feel alone right now. But no, I don't think a lot of people would think of sacred buildings and video games in the same breath. But
yeah, this is far and away is one of the most interesting games we've ever talked about.
Easily.
It almost more interesting to learn about than it is to play. Almost.
Agreed. Yeah.
This got me thinking, are there any other games that you know of, horror games specifically, that are unplayable today because they got pulled? Because I have one.
What's yours? I don't.
Okay, so this is just going to be a quick tangent. I don't want to go on too long. But back in high school, so this is 2010, 2011, maybe 2009, Doritos, of all things, started running an ad for this horror game that you could play in browser. And it was called Hotel 626/Asylum 626.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
It is. I remember this being incredibly immersive and incredibly scary. And what it did was, it used your webcam, it used your microphone, it used your social medias, and you would have to make decisions. Like, it would pull from your social media and be like, your friend Victoria Dandria is stuck in this room, and to the room to the right, your friend Dave Jackson is chained to the wall. And you had to make decisions on who to sacrifice, and it would then post that to your Facebook, because this was in the day where everything just took the ability to post onto your Facebook wall, or maybe MySpace even.
I love China. Yeah.
But it promoted this really cool thing. And I remember I see this on my Facebook memories every now and then when it comes around. It gave you the option at the very beginning, do you want to tell your friends about this? And if you said yes, it posted a status for you. This was back in the day where your status appeared directly to the right of your name. So you could say Ben Bugale, and then you would write, is feeling a little tired today, It would say, Rick Firestone desperately needs help. And then it would just post the link, like a bit.ly link, short link, so you couldn't tell. Very cool. Very cool.
That is cool.
And you can't find it anymore. It's gone. It's scrubbed from the internet. If you search for it, you could find some wikis about it, some Reddit posts, some YouTube videos. But, man, something I wish I could experience again.
I wish I could experience it, period.
Yeah, that's that. Also, shout out to another Flash game that you can't play anymore as far as I'm aware. Ex Mortis. Another good one from high school that I used to really like.
I've heard of the Ex Mortis, but never played it myself.
Yeah, it was on Newgrounds, and now that Flash is dead...
yeah.
Hey, bite your tongue.
No, I loved Flash.
Oh, I gotcha.
I loved it. Those were good days.
The ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny, baby. I think that about wraps it up. This was a cool one to talk about and a cool one to learn about.
Oh, yeah. Wildly interesting.
Before we wrap up, we do have another review to read. As we are wont to do, we always read the reviews at the end of the podcast. We would prefer it if they were 5 stars, of course. We're probably not going to read it if it's a 1 star, although we might. If we ever get a 1 star that leaves a review, we'll probably read it.
If it's fair.
Or if we just want to laugh at you. Let's be honest here.
Okay, that's true.
This one is not one of those. It is a 5-star review. Interesting topics in each episode from the podcast A Random Gamer's Corner. And if I had to guess, I'm guessing this is Alejandro.
Hello, Alejandro.
Don't call my name. He says, I'm sure he's heard that joke a million times. He says...
I knew it.
There's always an interesting topic to focus on for the episode, and the editing/structures of the episodes are well done. Thank you very much. I appreciate the editing shout-out. Definitely recommend listening to the show, especially if you love games and essays on games. 5 stars.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate that. We appreciate everybody for writing in, of course. But it's nice to hear the unique takes, and I think that might be the first editing shout out and the first nod to game essays. So
the essay you did, yes.
Yeah, and well, not to spoil anything, but somebody's got another one coming up.
I have something happening.
Yes. So that is it for this episode. Next episode of Spooktacular is a very special episode. I almost don't even want to talk about it.
Let's not talk about it.
Just you'll have to tune in.
You're going to have to tune in, you goblins and ghouls, and check. I'm out of words.
I was going to let you figure it out on the way. It's kind of like jazz or something. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for this new episode, if you want to get in contact with us, you can do that in a couple of different ways. First off, we are now on Patreon at patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. Much like PBS, this show is supported exclusively by listeners like you. And much like PBS, thank you.
Sorry, that was gold. That was really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If you want to join the other great folks like Dustin Miller and like Dave Jackson, who have chosen to support us on this network, they're not the only two. There are quite a few more. But if you want to join them, head on over to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. We've got a couple of different tiers and bonus stuff to go with each and every one. So there's something for every budget. But if you don't have the means to give money, that's okay too. We'll never take away from anybody just because they can't compensate financially. We are also available on Discord. We have a Discord. That link will be in the episode description. It is also on our social medias. What social medias do we have, Benjamin?
We have a Tumblr, and we have a Pinterest, and we have a MySpace.
I wish we had a MySpace.
We have a Twitter. We would have green papyrus font on a New York City backdrop. That's what we would have.
We would have, instead of a top 8 with other friends, we would have the apostles, their fake profiles, the
Thanks be to
apostles
God.
top 8.
Hallelujah.
But only 7 of them. The 8th one would be Mickey Mouse.
Ooh. Sorry. Well, Mickey is our dear leader. We have
Mickey Mouse, everybody. Oh.
Anyway, we have Rick mentioned a few ways to get in touch with us. We have a Twitter that, Rick, you are more active on than I am.
I be tweeting. It's true.
What is our handle there, Richard?
Oh, I don't remember the handle off the top of my head. I think it's at Pixel Project Pod.
Yes.
But if you search Pixel Project Radio, we come up.
And same can be said of Instagram, which I believe we're Pixel Project Radio Podcast. Yeah,
Yep,
we're the full
that's it.
podcast there. You can send us an email if you dare.
We got one. So we got one last night, as I was going to sleep.
Way.
Well, I think it's a marketing email. It started off as very much hey, I found you on Apple Podcasts. And then it was I've got this product I want to tell you about. And I was like, oh, man. So close.
Not okay. But those are ways you can get in touch with us.
And that's everything, I think, right?
There's nothing else for today.
As always, if you want to leave a rating or review, please visit Apple Podcasts or Podcast Addict. Those are the 2 places where you can rate and leave a review, so we like to plug those. Spotify is there as well, although you can only leave a star rating. But you could do that too. That's never say no to that. But of course, you can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. And I think that about does it. That about wraps up the final loop of this episode.
Well done, Rick. Well done. Good and faithful Rick.
Weird, but okay. My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Ben Bugale. We'll catch you next time.